Hey, everybody, welcome to the Aligned Love Podcast. This is the place where I am going to help you find the one thing that you feel is missing: healthy love. I am your host, Lauren Zoller, and in this podcast, I will share with you how to attract love, live in alignment, and elevate your deepest relationships. So buckle up, get present, tune into your body, and open up to the possibility that you truly do get to have it all. Let's dive in. Shannon, welcome to the show.
Oh, it is so good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I know that you are up to so much. And it's funny, I was reading your bio before because I've followed you for a long time, but I was reading your bio and I was like, whoa, she has 5 books. This is crazy. It's wild that you have 5.
Yeah, I actually have 6, so you must have an old bio. And I
Oh my
actually have
gosh.
4 new ones coming. Well, 2 new books and 2 new decks coming in the next couple of years. So it's crazy. But yes, I know it's
Holy.
like an honor to do what you love for a living. I don't feel like I work a day in my life, and it just keeps growing, and it's beautiful, and it's just abundant of awesomeness. So thank you for that.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's amazing. I just finished my first book,
Oh,
and
congrats.
thank you. And I don't know how you've written 6 at this point because one, I guess it gets easier as you go, but the first one
I
was hard.
I do love talking to authors because we all have our own kind of journey with it. It is a labor. It really is. It's like I call them book babies. It's such a process. It's energetically takes so much out of us. It's a full-on healing experience. And then there's the book comes out and it's not, then it's out in the world and that's a whole experience within itself. So I look forward to continuing the conversation with you throughout each stage of the book.
Yay. Yeah, I know. And I'm just so honored to have you here. We're going to dive really deep into self-love and
Mhm.
into self-worth, which I feel is such a buzzword right now. Everybody is talking about you got to love yourself, self-love, self-worth. And it's so intricate when you start to get into it and when we really dive deep into what it means. So I want to start before we even dive into self-love and self-worth. I always like to dive into the Align Love podcast with an intention. I really love to set an intention to start. And so I'm actually going to kind of toss the reins over to you and see if you can set an intention for what you would like the listener to walk away with as a result of our conversation together today.
Yeah, well, it's beautiful. So I'm going to place my hands on my heart. And if we do that all together too, it's a nice way to connect inward. And, may we all just connect deeper to our true self today. And we walk away feeling more aligned to ourself, our authentic self.
Yeah, I love it so much. So, keeping with that same theme, let's dive into this buzzword of self love.
Yeah.
And I want to hear your definition of it and how you describe it, because I feel like oftentimes people think, yeah, well, I love myself. I'm in love with myself, but they really haven't done some of that deeper work to really understand what that means. So can you just describe a little bit, what does that mean to you and how do you describe it?
It's such a great question and a beautiful place to start because, self-love is a journey, and it's an experience and an expansive experience. To be alive is to constantly find yourself, meet yourself, and fall in love with yourself. And so no matter where we are on our self-love journey, I think it's really important to realize we're not in a wrong spot. What happens
Mhm.
is we start to compare, or we start to feel like, oh my gosh, I don't love myself as much as I thought, or there's this constant kind of berate of what it should look like. Just know that even listening to, us, or coming to things that make you feel more connected to your true self, that's what self-love is. I wrote a book in 2017 called The Self-Love Experiment, and it became wildly, even to this day, with 6 books out, it is my international bestseller. I was in Korea. I was in Thailand, and I went on a tour, and the person I was sitting with on our food tour, side story here, she was from South Korea, and she's like, wait a second, you're an author? And she pulled up Amazon, and my book was #1, The Self-Love
Oh my
Experiment. It was like,
gosh.
and I didn't even know. And so it
So
was like
cool.
#1 in Korea. And so my point is, it was just really cool. This book has become an international bestseller. Oprah magazine named it #1 book for top self-comp to improve your confidence. And at the time when I wrote it, it was all about like falling in love with yourself. And for me, I found self-love through body love because I've always felt like my body was the barrier. And I've always struggled and, your body's supposed to look a certain way. But over the last few years, that book has been out and I went on, it's always so interesting. The book comes out and I go on a deeper mission within whatever the book was. And I've started to really identify that self-love is so much deeper than just, saying I love myself. Because in that book, I talk about self-care. I talk about, showing up for yourself and self-compassion. And that's a really beautiful place for us to be. But a deeper layer of self-love is self-respect, having boundaries, knowing your worth, and really standing in that. And so that is a deeper layer of self-love, and that's really where we're at. And that also looks like being aware of the toxicity in your life, codependent patterns, looking at people who maybe you think have your best interest, or you have, just like clearing out the darkness and looking at the shadows with light is really a deeper layer. And it's safe to do that because when you arrive to this place, you start to stand more in your truth, and that's really self-love.
I love it so much. It's funny. I was just interviewing Tim Ross on the podcast, and we were talking about that. We were talking about how it's a difficult journey sometimes to come home to really truly stepping into your authentic self and understanding your truth and be able to actually speak from that place. Because most people, I mean, to me, that is the definition of self love, is someone who is fully embodied in their authenticity and in transparency and in truth. And oftentimes it takes what you just spoke about, going into the darkness, to look at what are these codependency patterns? Where am I not really truly owning my voice and stepping fully into who I am? It's doing all of that work. So it sounds like your definition of self love really is you've got to go in, you've got to go into the darkness
Yeah.
to let
And
yourself get there.
And I think that knowing that that darkness, that is what self-love is. It's like having a child who, if they have a tantrum or they're expressing to you that they are hurt, you
Yeah.
don't turn away from that. You
Mm,
actually come into that with love. And we all have inner childs within us and inner children. And that's really what the self-love journey is a returning to that inner child that needs just a really big dose of love from you, because we didn't always get our needs met from our caretakers. We've had people who have betrayed us or said things to us, or judgments that came from teachers or people and bullies. And everyone has different things that they've experienced, and we've internalized that. And so it's about peeling the layer back and realizing we are not those experiences. We can really separate ourselves from those, and knowing that our worth does not come from what others put onto us.
mm,
And
so
when we
good.
start to separate that, and when we start to realize that we are not the things that happen to us, that's really where the self-love journey starts to rise you like the phoenix from the ashes. You start to really start to take care of yourself more from a place of, in my own journey, as I said, with my body love, it was always like I was made fun of, and I cycled through in and out of like eating. We moved around a lot when I was little, so I started to use food at a very young age, and then I cycled through different eating disorders all through my teens and high school. So different layers of finding body love, and then I really recognized there was this place of my body is not the source to be punished,
Mm,
and it is a place. It is my temple. And it is actually, I love myself so much that I'm going to take such radical care of this vessel. And that's a shift in our self-love journey, whether we come to self-love through body love, through our relationships, through how we think about ourselves. We all have a different pathway. And that's what, when we talk about authentic living, it's really about looking at the biggest wound within your life. If only this would get better for so many years.
yeah.
If only my body were the size that the world wanted it, right? Or, if
Yeah.
I didn't make the dance team because my body, I'm a plus size, all these things we tell ourselves. Whatever you tell yourself, that source, that's your
Mm,
avenue of going inward. That's where you can dive into the dark or the shadow and bring more light
yeah.
to it.
Ugh. So well put. So amazing. And it's it's interesting. There were two things that really resonated with me in that. My own personal journey has been through the lens of relationships.
Yeah.
I have been in more toxic relationships than most people on this planet because I was always searching for myself in someone else and
Mhm.
feeling like that is where I was going to find fulfillment. And through that journey of, again, what you just spoke to, looking at my biggest wound, like I can remember from, gosh, I don't know, the youngest that I can actually recall memories wanting so badly to be in a relationship and to be married and to have children. But it
Mhm.
was from a place that was not healthy. It was from a place of codependency and feeling like that was really going to fulfill me when I found it. That
Mhm.
was the way that I ventured into self love. So
Yeah.
I love that you're saying that was the first thing that came to mind, that you're saying, hey,
Yeah.
look at where your biggest wound is,
Right,
dive in
right.
there, but also do it with compassion. I think
Yes.
that so many people think shadow work and diving into wounds, it's this really dark place where you have to essentially beat yourself up
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. So how did you, because when you talk about compassion, how did you navigate that? And how do you, if someone is wanting to say, okay, I'm ready to start looking and starting to find the crack to go in, what's that first step in making sure that they do that, but also honor it from a space of compassion?
Yeah, and it's so amazing how you talked about your layer in is through relationships because I think so many of us can relate too. And what I hear from what you shared was that's about being chosen. I want to be chosen.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
that's a big piece of us on our journey in self-love where we want to be chosen. And the shift is we start choosing ourselves. And it's not from a place of that selfish kind of I'm choosing myself at all costs against others. It's a taking our energy back. And once we start to do that, you start to see there are areas that have been blind to me because I've been outsourcing my worth. I've
Ugh,
been looking to everyone else to give me what I did not know. See, for me, I didn't know. It took a series of many emotionally abusive relationships and one specific so intense narcissistic relationship that I didn't even know what narcissism was until I recognized that I was constantly in these types of relationships,
mhm.
that I started to realize it has gotten so bad that I have to look at why am I attracting these, and not from a place of manifesting woo woo like, oh, I'm the one. It was like I can't keep living this way because this
Right,
is exhausting and
right.
my body's breaking down. And
Yep.
I think from that place, I had to choose myself, and that was the shift. And so we start to choose ourselves, and it can look like anything that starts to feel down in our heart. And so my heart led me to different healers, to different like journaling activities. You start, I call it the sponge phase. And the sponge phase is a learning phase. A lot of us like to learn, especially if we love podcasts like this
Yeah.
or we read books. And so it doesn't have to be this deep, dark therapy, although therapy really does help and coaching helps. It can be this safety. It can be this, if you imagine you're wrapping yourself in love because you're getting a care team and you're starting to support yourself and nurture yourself, the part of you that has been long forgotten is now actually being tended to. If we look at it in that way and realize that's really what's going on, we start to see that it's safe. And in
Mm,
that safety, we go deeper into it. And then we start to see the results and we start to feel healthier. We start to feel more love. And by the way, when you start having more self love, you start to clear out that toxicity, that energy can't reach you. And then you start having more abundance. You start having more of the things come to you that are in the right fit. Your relationships are healthier. You feel better. Your mental health is better. It just keeps going. So
yeah.
it's a catalyst, right?
Right, right. Well, and what you just pointed out is that awareness really is that first step. And when you take awareness and knowing, because I often, you know, when you talked about having those patterns and attracting those types of relationships into your life, the first step of the healing journey, I always say, is awareness. You have to, and again, not from the woo woo space, but
Right.
recognize that what's in your current reality is a reflection of the way that you view yourself and the way that you love
Yes.
yourself.
Yeah.
And just waking up to that awareness is compassionate.
It's compassionate and it's monumental in our growth journey because it's almost like you can now take the shades off. If we've been
Yeah.
blind, like a racehorse, we've been blinded, like, I need love, I need love, I need the perfect body, I need to get that money in the bank account. And then you start to see, oh my gosh, it's actually so much bigger than that. Because a lot of the times we attract what's on the same kind of everything's energy. So I really came to this awareness in my journey too. I would feel like I'm overweight and the world doesn't like me because of my size. I'm never going to get what I want. And so I'd constantly be rejected, even if that wasn't the reason. Or I'd be in relationships where I was needing them to validate me. It sounds like similar with you. And if you recognize the type of people we get in relationships with, they were also outsourcing their validation and worth, maybe in a different way. And so you come together. So your experiences are constantly coming together. And when we heal that, that experience can no longer cling to us like Velcro. You've
Yes.
healed it, right? And so
Right.
now if my worth isn't dependent on anything outside of me, or if I'm working to at least detach from needing someone else to validate my existence. And one of the ways we can get into this, since it's like a little life coaching session here,
Yes.
and anyone listening, Tony Robbins has a question that he talks about, I think in like Date with Destiny. And it's the simple question of what has been most important for me to feel in my life. And a lot of the times we start from a place of validation, attention, love, not so much love, but it's like, I need something. And it's usually what we didn't get when we were younger. And so
Mhm.
we grow up overcompensating and giving that to everyone else because it's what we didn't have. And we hear this in kind of the personal development and therapy circles and stuff. If you grew up in a kind of a home where your needs weren't met as much, you people please or codependent yourself into relationships. So you become indispensable, but it's from a place of desperation and fear. If we start to turn that attention back and give ourselves the love that no one else was capable of because they were just doing what they could to live their life, and we stop internalizing that something's wrong with us, everything changes. And we also change our question. It's no
Mhm.
longer important for me to feel validation or attention or whatever it is we're seeking, acknowledgement from others. What's most important for me is to feel fulfilled for myself or love for myself or
Yeah.
compassion for myself. We change it. And our whole world is now operating on a different baseline.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I always say that the universe responds to your most predominant frequency.
Yes, exactly.
And if you're, and really, I believe if you boil every single emotion down, it's either fear or love, right? If you think about shame, anger, and these are all, we're not saying don't feel these things, right? But what
Right,
you're
right.
speaking to is if it is your baseline, if your nervous system is operating in that space of survival, in that space of fear, then naturally, if the universe responds to your most predominant frequency, that is what's going to be your reality. And
Mhm.
what you're speaking to is what I think was the most profound, and it sounds like it was for you too. The most profound awakening for me was really waking up to that reality and
Yes.
owning, because from there, from that space of true deep awareness and acceptance, you
Mm.
realize, oh, wow, like I actually have created all of this.
Yeah, and, as you share that, it's also this awareness of I can get out of it then. And it becomes
Yes.
empowering.
Amen.
And it's like, oh, I can actually heal. And it's not from a place of I'm wounded, I'm broken, I need to be fixed, or I made a mistake before. I just didn't know. It's like I
Mm,
was a kindergartner and I just didn't know or have the awareness. And now I've got more education and I've risen to first grade or graduate school, whatever, that analogy might not be the best, but you get where I'm going. And
right.
it's really about that, right? It's like I can make the change.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how do people, because I know a lot of people are going to be listening to this. A lot of the women that listen to this podcast, they're in their mid 30s, 40s, some of them in their 50s. They're really struggling. They've had success in life. They're in a space where they feel like, I've done really well in my career. I feel like I'm in a good place, but I just can't seem to find healthy partnership and to really ground into my worth in relationship to someone else, which is always a reflection of what's happening internally.
Mhm.
So, where do you start in that when you feel like you're so, because I've been here before too, when you feel like you're so in the dark with attracting certain things into your life? What do you feel is the very first step to awaken to your worth when you feel lost in a dynamic or you feel lost in a toxic relationship pattern or cycle?
Yeah, I think there's a few layers there. And I think when we really look at, I can definitely relate to where it's, we have a lot of success in one area of our life. And I think what we can look at too is one that's manageable, that's controllable. We have skills, we have certain passions, we have a mission, and we dive into it. but we can't control relationships, or we can't control the outcome of someone else who's going to hurt us. And so it
Hmm.
actually, if we start to look at it through the lens of sometimes it's a trauma response, this extreme independence, or this idea of really like being super successful, which is a beautiful thing and a gift. But when we're ignoring the parts of ourselves, or we keep finding ourselves in the same types of relationships, it is about self-love. And it comes back to an awareness. And you say, how can we awaken? Well, just even understanding that, have I been looking to my career for a sense of validation or a sense of worth because I'm not getting it in other areas? And then releasing that codependency, or releasing that attachment, and realizing, because if we're still outsourcing our value or our worth, that's a place we can control it. I'll just work harder, or I'll go, I know how to make the money. I can do it. I can get more clients. But the relationships are a whole other thing. And so they actually
Yeah.
become something that really make our central nervous system extremely uncomfortable. And so whether we're in a relationship, we keep finding ourselves in the same type of relationship, or we completely stay single for months, decades, years, whatever it may be, our truest self, we talked about the intention for today as being authentic and aligned to your true self, craves connection, wants intimacy, wants to be loved for who we are.
Yeah.
And so we start by doing that to ourselves on every level. We become the relationship that we want. And I don't mean this in this self-helpy relationship coaching, like just go out and date yourself.
Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, sure, go to the movies by yourself if you want. But what I mean is, you start to nurture yourselves and mother yourself in the way that you never have. You start to be intimate with yourself in a way that you never have. You start to talk so loving to yourself that there is no room for criticism or hate. You realize you are right where you need to be. The right person is on their way, and you believe in it with every force in your body. And you no longer allow those thoughts because you have addressed them. And so I think what it really becomes is, the first step is to look at those limiting beliefs. If we're constantly saying it's not going to happen for me, or maybe I'm just meant to be alone forever, whatever
Yeah.
these things we tell ourselves, we have to get really honest and really look at the shadows. That's what the bringing the flashlight in on those is a good place to start. And then saying, what do I really want? Because sometimes we think we want a relationship, but really we don't. And it's not always from a place of, I'm scared I'm going to get hurt. It's like, no, actually, I really don't know if I want a relationship. And
Yeah.
so you have to be honest with yourself. It's honesty.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you brought up two really great key points in that. The first one being that you have to go in, you have to start to recognize the shadow. You have to go in there and you have to start to look at what is keeping you in this space of feeling like I'm not worthy, or I keep attracting these types of partners over and over again. And the second piece is clarity. And I always say I meet so many women who, I call it dating in a dark room with a blindfold on. They just put on a blindfold, they go walk into a dark room, and they just hope that they're going to run in to the person that they want to do life with, and
Yeah.
or that they feel like they're just going to fall into the life that's theirs.
Yeah.
And if you're out there in the world and you don't have clarity
Yes.
around what it is that you deeply desire for yourself, it's
Mhm.
like walking in that dark room. But here's the catch to that, which is the first part that you spoke to. You can't actually gain clarity if you don't think and feel that you're worthy of receiving what you have clarity around.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you witness this in the work that you do, but I usually see when I work with women, one or the other. They either have this crazy clear list of everything that they want in their life, but they haven't done the inner work to feel worthy of claiming it, or they've done all this inner work, but they don't have clarity, like crystal clear clarity on what it is that they desire.
Yeah, it's so interesting too when you talk about it in the frame of relationships, because it's this idea of wanting something really bad but not believing it can happen,
Yes.
or believing it can happen and being so frustrated that it's not here that we kind of change our life and just settle. And so I
Yeah.
think what you're getting at, and what's really really good about what you just said is, and what came through when you were saying that, is we have to, on our journey of really, yes, it's about clarity, but in that clarity, have a conviction and knowing that you are worth it. Once we're there, though, it's about saying no. to what is
Mm,
not for you. We have to have access to our no, as Mark Grove says, the author of Liberated Love and Create the Love. He and his wife wrote a book, and they talk about boundaries. And it is so important to be able to draw a line in the sand because, before I didn't realize until that very toxic relationship that I was codependent. I didn't know I had abandonment issues. I thought, here I am manifesting my
yeah.
dream person, and here he is. And it was all like an illusion. And through that illusion, I saw all of the shadows. And in those
Yeah.
shadows, I realized I have to be able to say no. And in
Mhm.
saying no, it transformed my life because if something comes to you that does not align with that list that is clear, and it's not a list like, oh, he is tall, dark, handsome, or whatever it may be. It's a list of, do I feel respected? Is this a
Yes.
partner? Is this someone I can manifest a beautiful life with? Are we working together with the same values? And we have to look at, are we creating clarity from our values, not
Mhm.
just a list, a shopping list of what we want in somebody? Because that is where the illusion comes. And the
Yeah.
universe can't really, it can try to fit you into this
Yeah.
shopping list, but you'll get it. You won't be fulfilled.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a fantastic and really hard lesson to learn. I too just went through that very same thing.
Yeah,
I
me too.
had a list, met
Hmm.
it all, but it wasn't in alignment with my values. And I didn't have that clarity piece. I thought I had the clarity piece.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
thought I
and that's
had
where
it.
self-compassion comes in. It's like,
Right.
okay, each step, instead of beating ourselves and saying, "Oh, I'm still here and I can't believe," and those limiting beliefs come back in, keep us stuck, say, "No, I'm doing better. I said no sooner," or "I
Mhm.
recognize really what I don't want faster." We start to pump
Exactly.
ourselves up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's so important because so many times people will get out of, and I mean, full transparency, I am a relationship therapist. I'm a somatic therapist. I spend all this time helping women find healthy love. I exited a relationship
Mhm.
that wasn't everything that was in alignment with what it was that I deeply desired. And it would have been so easy for me to beat myself up about that.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is no, every relationship, regardless of where you are in your journey, teaches you
Mhm.
something about yourself
Yeah.
and getting really clear on, okay, maybe I have clarity, but maybe I need to fine tune in alignment with what my values are, what my morals are, what really these non negotiables are. How do I look at those and
Yeah.
have compassion for the next relationship that I enter into? That those I get to say yes and no if that isn't there.
Yeah, and I think back to what you shared earlier, there's this desire, the little girl in us wants to be chosen.
Yep.
And so we kind of approach these things, but when we start doing this inner work, it's like, no, I'm going to be the chooser. And I'm going to start looking at it more from a lens of this logic, because your heart is going to be in it when it's the right fit, right? But from what you're just sharing, it's so amazing because we start to have a list that's not a shopping list of the type of qualities or the type of career they have or whatever it may be. It's how you feel. I feel
Mm,
seen, I feel heard, I feel loved, I feel supported, and it's also how they show up in the relationship, which is really what we're looking for, I feel, in a long-term partnership. It's about building a life with someone if that's what you want, right?
yeah. Yeah.
And
And
that's really what
it's
a liberated, beautiful, healthy love is. That's what
so
self-love is in
true.
a relationship. And to that point, you love yourself so much, you then meet someone who is also doing the work and loving themselves so much.
Mm,
And so when you
yeah.
see it sooner, you can say, sorry, God bless you on your journey, go your way in peace, love, and harmony. But we're not a good fit,
We're not-
right? Because you're
Yeah.
like, you are not doing the work, but I am. And that's been
Right.
my journey recently.
Exactly. Yeah. Same. Same
Goodbye.
girl. Yes. Same. It's like, but it becomes so much, at least for me, and I'm sure that it's the same for you. It's so liberating to
It
know
is.
that and
That's
to
it.
know, right? Like I get to say no to this because every time I say no, it leads me closer to my yes.
Yes, exactly. And Matthew Hussey's a relationship coach, and he talks about this too. And I remember hearing this one time. Actually, I was in what I thought was a really good friendship that was turning into a romance, but it turned out the person was a professional con artist.
Mm,
And talk about like really being blindsided. And once that happened, I turned to Matthew Hussey and he said, you have to say no sooner. And I
yeah.
realized the very first night we hung out, there was like 5 huge red flags, and I ignored it. 3 months later, talking to this person every day, hanging out, like really growing this connection. It was all fake. I realized I had betrayed myself. And
Yes.
so
Yeah.
when we look at these and we get really honest with ourselves, it's about trusting ourselves. It's about looking at not the red flags and running right away, but looking at a real red flag for us. So even making a red flag list has been
Mhm.
really helpful for me. And knowing that that's part of your boundaries, your standards. And that's really what self love is also, because you're now standing in your truth and living an embodied standard of what you really are calling in.
Yeah, so good. I love the idea of a red flags list.
Oh, yeah. I love it. My clients love it too. I love it when they
So
share them.
good.
They're great.
Yeah. I mean, even I think you could even do a red flags list and a yellow flags list, because sometimes
Absolutely.
yellow flags become red flags. Sometimes they don't. They go back to green, but it's just having that again, it's the awareness piece of stepping in and understanding that and having it in front of you.
It is, and it's also about character and I think consistency. So
Mhm.
if something happens once, you can kind of observe, but if something becomes what their character is over time, or if you start to see it happen over and over, then this is usually who they are. And you have to just ask yourself, is this enough for me? Or is this, if this were to happen 5 years, 10 years, and we do continue this relationship, is this something that I would be okay with? And that's
Mm,
because really, like you said, relationships, they're about us.
right.
And yes, we're co-creating with someone else. But if you have these little things that you're hiding in the beginning, like if something bothers you or if they do something and you don't speak up, then that's really where when we're talking about codependency, you want to start speaking up sooner and knowing that your needs do matter and you do have a voice. So the sooner we can start to just kind of voice that or have difficult conversations, the more healthy our relationships can be sooner.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then how they respond tells us everything. Is this
Right.
someone I want to create a life with or move forward into the next date with?
Yeah. You get to step into the driver's seat, which is so liberating, right? And I
Yeah.
think that so many women give that up when they
Yeah.
date and when they go, and men too. But it's you're saying really is really honor who you are and know that you get to say no, not from a place of this person is going to accept or reject me, but from a place of this is what my truth is. And I know that
Yes.
when I honor my truth, I get to be in this space of, you know, really living in alignment with what it is that I desire.
Yeah. And again, that's clarity. So knowing what it is you really want and then really holding to that. And I think what really stops us is this fear of being rejected or this fear of rocking the boat or the fear of all kinds of things. And that's where the shadow work comes in. And we don't even have to call it shadow work because that kind of feels shadowy, which is fine. But what if we called it light work? Like we're actually
Yes.
sending
Yeah.
light to the
To
dark.
it.
And what if we call it
Mm,
inner child work or we're sending our little self love? It's just self love work, to tell you the truth. And it's not
yeah.
even work when you do it because it's actually liberating. When you said it's like you're in the driver's seat and it's freedom, I pictured like driving in a convertible and like you're free. We all
Yeah.
want freedom. All of
Yeah.
us. We
Yes.
all want to feel more freedom, but we've been operating from a baseline of I need safety, I need to feel secure. So fear comes in. But
Yeah.
what if we all operated from freedom? I get to be free to be who I am, and I allow you to be who you are. And we come together and dance if we're right for each other. There's no more control or trying to push. And that really does change the dynamics of our relationships.
I love it so much.
Mhm.
So I ask this question every single time on the Align Live podcast, and I love every single answer that I get because it's always so different. And so I'm gonna ask you the same question. What does it mean to be in an aligned relationship to you? And again, we can go outside of the confines of a romantic relationship, right? Think
Mhm.
about alignment with yourself. What does that really mean to be in aligned relationship?
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that question. I feel like I just shared what I feel aligned is. It's we allow each other, we experience our whole self as ourself. And I am
Yeah.
me as free as I can be, and you are you as free as you are. And in that experience, we support and love each other. And that's a place to be. So an aligned relationship is really knowing who you are and
Mhm.
connecting deep within and love. It's allowing
Yeah.
love to be there. Yeah.
I love it. So
What's
good.
your answer?
um, it changes so
Yeah,
much. It's funny.
yeah.
I had somebody come in. Well, I shouldn't say it changes. I would say that there's addendums that are always added to it as I start to evolve and, or I continue to evolve, not start. I've been evolving for a long time. But for me, it's understanding that safety, like knowing safety and security within me and knowing safety and security in whatever it is I'm relating to and having that sense of resonance between those two becomes that alignment. When I
Mm-hmm.
know that if it's pulling me out of that space of safety, what's
Yes.
happening here? How can I question it? That's also
Right.
being in alignment, but it's being curious about
Yeah.
what's pulling me out of that safety, but always knowing that it's there.
Yeah, I love that too because it makes me realize something that I've really identified on my journey too with personal relationships is if I feel like I can't be myself, if I can't
Mhm.
share or speak up or I'm hiding a part of me, then this isn't the right relationship. And am I
Right.
holding myself back or
Yeah.
when I do speak up, they constantly it just doesn't go the way it's supposed to. That's not the right relationship. So what you're sharing there is it's not a safe relationship. It's
Yes.
not safe to be
Exactly.
me. And why would you ever want to spend time or energy or your time on earth with someone who's not allowing you to be who you are, which leads me to what I was sharing about my version, which is the exact same in a different way. We are free to be who we are as we are and love each other in that way wholly. It's
Right.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, and and we're not sitting here saying that conflict doesn't happen and that
Oh, right.
activation doesn't happen, right? But it's
Yeah.
still understanding that safety is that primary sense of what holds you in relationship to whatever you're in relationship to, whether it's a person, to your body, to food. It's understanding that safety is still there, even when it's uncomfortable, even when there is activation, even when it feels
Yes.
hard, right? It's like you still have that sense of groundedness and safety inside of yourself.
Yeah, as you're sharing that too, that's truly what self-love is too. And that's why when we bring more self-love into everything we do, we realize no matter how the situations outside of us, we get laid off from a job, hope it doesn't happen. We had a sudden handing of a divorce, whatever it may be that feels catastrophic, we have ourselves.
Yeah.
I got you. And
Yeah.
that is truly the safety lives within. And when we're living in that space, it really we bring that forth and call in healthier relationships on all levels. So the self-love is really the key.
I love it. So I love that we've brought
Mhm.
it full circle. So Shannon,
Yeah.
what's next for you? I
Mhm.
know, always. I love it. It happens
Yes.
every time. Tell us what's next for you. Tell us where people can
Oh,
find you.
so
Kind of just brag
beautiful.
on yourself
Yeah,
for
well,
a
I'm
bit.
on social media, Shannon Kaiser Writes, and I love connecting with people. Have the website playwiththeworld.com, and I have a few projects I'm working on. As I shared, they're in the works. Some books that we're getting ready to move forward, and kind of launching some new things coming soon. So can't wait to share those soon.
I
Mhm.
love it so much. We will make sure to link all of that in the show notes below. Shannon, it has been an absolute honor having you on the show. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your heart. And I can't wait to see you again next time.
Thank you. It's been great to be here.
That wraps up today's episode of the Aligned Love podcast. One thing that would really help me and the other new potential listeners is for you to rate this show and leave a comment wherever you tune in and listen. Also, make sure to link up with me on Instagram at Lauren Zoller, and please share this podcast with anyone who you think may enjoy it. Until next episode, remember, every transformation begins with one moment of awareness, and I hope today has been yours. I'll see you next time.